So by default, I want when someone presses update, feeds appears, but it has disappeared by, it's like on rendering, it's not present. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to come and create a default of feeds with the value of shown. Okay, so let me see what I can do. So I'm going to create a value and I'll call it my tabs. Okay, so comma here and then I create my tabs. Okay, should it be my tabs? Let me see. Okay, let me first make it simple under the return. Sorry, it's supposed to be under the return. So I'm going to choose, let me first make one for feeds, then we go in. So feeds, okay, by default, it is going to be false, okay? All feeds, okay, is going to take a value just like that. Okay, so let me see, this should return this. Okay, feeds. So which means I should reflect feeds, okay, down here in the gutter. So this one should be reading from feeds. Just this is just a debug check, feeds. Okay, so which means I'm going to create a button that when pressed, okay, I'm going to create a button that when pressed, it disappears or appears based on that. So this button here, I'm going to add, where is it? I'm going to add an on-click property, and in Vue JS it's like at click, okay? Now it changes based on the version, at click, okay? Show, okay? At click, let's choose feeds maybe. At click, let's choose, it's going to go to the property called get feeds before I make it to show. Okay, so get feeds, so which means I'm going to come here under methods, I create one called get feeds. Okay, then get feeds is going to take in this value. It will do this dot feeds referring to this feeds is equal to text that says now feeds are showing. Okay, so with that done, okay, so this is a default issue, but we're going to work on it later. So when I click on layers and choose to update feeds, you can see now feeds are showing. Okay, so I want now feeds are showing to be showing and these others are not showing. And we come to if conditions there. But however, I want when I press this button again, it disappears. So instead of that, we're going to choose a property called show. Okay? Show all. Okay, so let's see. So this should be false. Okay? This should be false. So instead of loading here in the button, the on click should choose to show. Okay, so this now that has feeds, I'm going to return this to the normal, that feeds panel. Okay, feeds panel. Okay, so feeds panel. So we have a property called V-SHOW. Okay, so which means I can come to this here and I choose V-SHOW. Okay, so V-SHOW. Okay, and I can make it true or false. So by default, I can make it false. or it can pick a value from the other. So V-SHOW by default is going to be false. So you can see it has disappeared and only have water and eggs. So what are we going to do? When a person clicks this button, okay, when a person clicks this button, it goes to a method called getFeeds, and then getFeeds will do something of the sort. So V-SHOW is by default here, feeds false. So I'm going to make feeds now turn into true. Okay, the moment the button is clicked. So when I click update feeds, all right, so do I need to refresh? Okay, let me first go back to home. Update feeds is supposed to show, so by default it's on false. So this dot feeds show is by default on false. So it should take in now the feeds value, okay? So it should take in feeds. Great. So which means if I click, it's supposed to be by default on. All right, so let me load it again. All right, so by default it's on false. When I click, it appears, okay? So I can do an interchange of if it should appear or not. Now I'm going to write the first lazy way of checking the rest. So V-SHOW for feeds, okay? Now V-SHOW for water, V-SHOW for water, and then lastly V-SHOW for eggs. Okay, so if you get such an issue of these panels not loading, you have to refresh. I think it has cached memory. So I have to come back to the local host and then refresh with cached memory, then go back to home. All right, so if I click on the eggs panel, it is showing. And then if I click on feeds panel, it's showing. Okay, so we go ahead with the V-SHOW. If I click on, I need to one for the eggs too. And this should be this dot eggs, okay, is equal to true. So which means if I click, okay, the feeds should show. If I click water, water should show. If I go to the pan of eggs and I click on eggs, eggs is showing. So however, I need one by one panel, not all. So which means I need to write an if statement for all these, okay? So by default, all this will be false, okay? So I'm going to write an if statement, okay? And it's going to determine if any of those is clicked is true or not, okay? So if, okay, this dot feeds is equivalent to false, okay, when this is loaded, you're going to do the following. Make sure that the rest are false. So this is basic, but it is working. You know, I'm not trying to create, however, people use it. Why should I even be explaining? Make sure that the rest, okay, make sure that this dot water, this dot water is equal to false if it was true. And then also make sure that this dot water eggs is equal to false. Okay, then I'm going to just copy this and put it in others, okay, and then just interchange. So which means if this dot water is equal to false, make sure that this dot feeds is equal to false, this dot water is equal to true, and then this dot eggs is equal to false. Then the other is if this dot eggs is equal to false, so like it's not showing, okay? So you make sure that this dot feeds is equal to false. If it was showing, it will disappear. This dot water is equal to false and this dot eggs is equal to true, so that it opens up and shows. All right, so I've saved, and let's see our magic. So if I click on feeds, it will show. If I click on water, water will show. If I go to eggs and click on eggs, the other will disappear. Okay, so if I need to hide it again, I can choose to do the inverse. Now it